Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us for B2B Sales in the New World Summit. And I'm super excited because this is going to be a couple hours of different sessions covering a variety of different topics, from sales development, which is what we're going to be focused on in this panel, all the way through sales operations, sales leadership, closing and renewal tactics by some other folks later on, and then we're going to have individual presentations going on with a couple other experts focused on the topic. Now, we are doing these things on virtually online here, so sometimes we have some hiccups here. It's just the world of virtual, so do bear with us if we have any of those issues. Just a couple quick things. Once this session is done, you'll see at the top left, there's a session or schedule of the various sessions. So once this session is done, you can go ahead and just click on the next session, which is going to be in roughly about 30 minutes, and then we'll start that one. But I want to go ahead and introduce some of my great friends and just experts in the room here today and in the industry. David, why don't we kick off with you? Just a quick introduction.
Hey, thanks, George. This is so fun. I'm really excited. David Delaney, founder of Tenbound, and just excited to be here.
Awesome. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what Tenbound does?
Yeah, absolutely. So our big trigger event is I'm trying to fix my sales development program. If there's something wrong, give us a call. We can fix it, or we can at least point you in the right direction. And we also put out a lot of free media. So we do podcast webinars and blog posts, et cetera, on sales development to just try to put that information out into the community to help out. So that's at tenbound.com.
Awesome. And David's also been an incredible leader in sales development for a variety of really some of the world's most innovative companies in Silicon Valley. So he's a modest fella. Gabe, why don't do a quick intro for yourself?
Sure. So I got a little bit there.
Yeah, and Gabe, by the way, if you're getting that feedback, sometimes you might have like a couple tabs open. It's also good to have some headphones as well.
Oh, you know what? So, I think I had a couple tabs open. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, no worries. It happens. We're used to doing these things in person, right? How many have we done in person?
Yeah, it reminds me, I was on a Zoom meeting with someone and they're like, sorry, I'm making mac and cheese for my children. And you're like in the middle of talking about projections and you're like, beep, 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 beep. So like, I think we all get it, right? Quick background on myself. Gabe here from AlwaysHired, excited to connect with everyone. Thanks for having me on, George. We help companies hire remote SDRs. Since COVID started, we've hired and onboarded double-digit SDRs, and every single one of them has made it through their onboarding and ramp. So we're really excited about it. Happy to share some of the best practices that we've noticed to kind of give people tips and tactical advice. And yeah, excited to be here with two other experts speaking on the topic, like David and Jason.
Thank you so much, Gabe. And Jay, my brother, when I was starting multiple companies over the years, you've let me crash on your couch and fed me. Thank you so much for always being a brother to me. Why don't you go ahead quickly, just a quick intro.
Yeah, that's how I got started in tech. My first tech company was a couch surfing company. First customer, George Soto. I'm kidding. My name is Jason Vargas. I'm one of the co-founders at RevShoppe. What we do is we work with SalesLoft and outreach customers, and we actually help them design new operating models that really puts their buyers at like the center of everything that they do. So we align the models with their strategy to their inbound and outbound motions, and then we build all that directly into outreach or SalesLoft, right? So whether that's the governance of the system, the workflows, building out the automation, messaging, and then we take that and we enable the team to make sure that they maximize everything related to outreach and SalesLoft.
Awesome. All right, well, let's dive into it. We got about, roughly 20 minutes or so to really dive in. I'm going to tell you that, I started as what we call now an SDR. Back then, it was just inside sales, right? It was like the recent grad cold calling and qualifying and not closing and handing off, right? Gabe, how has sales development changed in the last 5 years? There's so many tools. There's so many, so much competition. Everyone has automation right now. How has it changed? And of course, the obvious is this current world we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the biggest things that have changed in sales development over the last few years, I think one of the things that goes beyond just like the tools is the attitude. I think it's gotten a little bit tougher as more companies have SDRs, as you're prospecting into more accounts, as everyone starts adopting the same tactics, account-based marketing. It's like the things that used to work don't necessarily always work now from a tactical perspective. The basics are still kind of there, but now you have everyone following best practices, everyone following the same tactical advice. So it requires just like another level of thinking to get ahead of the curve and realizing it's not even the best practice that's going to help you. It's like seeing ahead of the curve and trying to identify the trend that's going to give you the competitive advantage. And that's what I've noticed over the last 5 years has been the biggest shift in being an SDR or managing SDRs.
Gotcha. And what would you say, David, is some of the stuff that you've seen?
Yeah.
And you're intimately involved. I mean, both of y'all, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo Gabriel. I mean, that's a really good point in that there's so much information out there now. Like, I mean, just 5-10 years ago, you were really on your own and you didn't have all the tools. And so when I think about that question, it's like, on one hand, there's so many tools, there's so much help out there. It's how do you curate that for yourself and really become an expert in the tools that you have available and what's on hand, whether it's free tools or whatever the company has bought for you. Like, how good are you at actually utilizing those and really leveraging them? And then on the flip side of that, it's I wish that there was a silver bullet, for sales development. Like, unfortunately, it does go back to the basic blocking and tackling of, becoming an expert on your industry that you're calling into, becoming an expert on the people that you're calling, memorizing the script until you can say it, to the point where you can add your own flavor, and just, really focusing on those core sales skills. Every tool, every, free resources out there is not going to help you if you don't put in that work yourself to improve. So, I wish I had a better answer.
It's interesting because I spoke to a leader the other day at a tech company who was in charge of sales development and these sort of things. And he was telling me that it's really about going back to the fundamentals. Like, they're throwing away a lot of the tools that particularly automation tools that they were using to go back and actually be slower and handwrite emails and these sort of things. Jason, you right now are focused on optimizing all sorts of parts of the sales cycle, but I know you spent a lot of time in sales development. What would you say is changing, and what are some of the ways that we can now start to break through this noise and this clutter and this competition and the attitude that Gabe was talking about?
Well, it kind of couples a lot of what you guys were talking about and you guys have started to allude to. So you can't really look at it just from a sales development, because it's not really sales development anymore. It's becoming much bigger than that, right? Just like, you had the rise of sales ops and now rev ops, there's a rise of sales engagement versus just sales development. It all kind of couples into the same thing. But designing your sales engagement strategy, that's how companies need to start thinking, because it's a part of a bigger machine, right? And how does that sales engagement strategy fit inside that machine to make sure there's a fluid experience for the buyer, right? And the sales engagement can be, the SDR, the ADR, BDR, whatever you want to call it. It can be the technology that you're leveraging. It can be the strategy behind how you're approaching your accounts, whether you're account-based focused or you're kind of trying to break into a new territory. So the engagement strategies is a key component that probably a lot of people don't think about. And the reason we focus there is because there has been a huge change in that, right? It's not just cool, SDR team, go. It's no, how does it fit into the bigger part of everything, the landscape, everything your company's doing to acquire those buyers, right? So, and then you also see, outreach and sales loft kind of moving into those spaces as well. I mean, if you actually look at Max Altschuler's new position, new title he just moved into, he's not in marketing, it's VP of Sales Engagement, right? And so that's a huge new component. Just like RevOps is a big thing you can have that sales engagement piece, because you have to think about the strategy. And the strategy revolves around the technology you use, your positioning messaging that you're using, and then the enablement, and make sure that those tools are communicating with each other. Salesforce is communicating to Outreach or Sales Lab. It's communicating effectively with Marketo. And how does that flow of data from when the buyer downloads a piece of content or requests a demo, how does that get to your reps, and how do they execute? Do they know how to execute on that, right? So I think that's kind of the big shift that we're starting to see. You know, the whole conversation in the past of like, is the SDR going to go away or be replaced by automation? Probably not. We're starting to get smarter as organizations, right? And you do need those people to fill those roles, to be able to respond to the inbound flows and demo requests and things of that sort, right? So you have to kind of think of it from that perspective, not just pure sales development.
So are we saying complete revenue chain alignment, like the folks Craig and those
Absolutely.
folks Scott over at Topo always talked about, right? It's not just, account-based sales development and sitting in silos. I mean, we talked a lot about sales and marketing alignment, which we'll be talking about later on in the panel. So is that what we're saying? We're saying just complete alignment?
Yeah, I see. We're starting to get to that point. Craig and those guys at Topo have been talking about that for a while, and I think you're starting to see organizations starting to modernize and changing their operating models to fit within the whole new ecosystem of technology and the new training that's coming out for reps and just all that kind of stuff. You're starting to see. So I think over time you'll start to get, in my opinion, but I don't know much. So, but that's we're going to start seeing that alignment more and more.
Got it. Gabe, I mean, you are specifically focused on recruiting, training, getting SDRs ready for success in this world. What attributes right now in this remote world, I don't see the world changing anytime soon. What are those attributes that a killer SDR has to really possess specifically for this new remote world? Even if we go back to 30% in person or something, I don't think the world's going to ever go back to what it was post-COVID, which is not necessarily a negative.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a couple things that are interesting. Number one, just to call it out, I mean, sales used to be a pretty heavy bro culture. You had mainly males. You had them probably from a specific demographic. And what would you do every Friday at the end of work? I mean, we all know what the answer would be, right? So it had this really specific kind of like bro culture that you had to fit into. And now that it's not about like hanging out with your bros at the office, and it's more about like, how do we actually succeed in this like really harsh environment? It's made it so that the type of person we're looking for is a little bit different. And now what we need someone is less like bull in China shop, which I think would be more what an SDR was before. Just put them in a seat, get them cranking. You got outreach, just have them send emails, whatever. They'll figure it out. That was kind of old school bull in China shop. Now you really need someone who's like nimble and creative and solution oriented. And there's all these other adjectives that some of them maybe existed in the past when you describe the SDR, but now it's like when an SDR starts, what is onboarding like? It's like Zoom meetings with people, right? It's like, what's the team culture? So you just need this different set of personality, and whether that's being more creative, more of a problem solver, more solution oriented, as opposed to someone who could just like run through a wall. So I feel like that's been some of the big shifts that are starting to happen now when people are hiring SDRs.
How about you, Gabe? David, I know you're seeing a lot of SDRs. What would you say are some of those those differences or those attributes?
Yeah, I mean, the key attribute now more than ever, now that we're remote, I try to think of it as entrepreneurial. I mean, because you're essentially on your own to some extent. You're physically on your own. You can't go out, and go to the water cooler or just turn next to you and ask, for help. So you've got to be able to leverage, Slack and Zoom and all the different tools that we have to figure it out. And the best SDRs that we work with, and on the flip side, the ones that really struggle, it's a very entrepreneurial ownership attitude toward what they're doing, and looking forward to see how that they can use those skills moving into the next step in their career. Because becoming a sales rep, it's the same thing. You're basically the CEO of your territory, and it's up to you to get it done. So that really do-it-yourself entrepreneur type of attitude with no blame game, no finger pointing, just taking full responsibility for getting it done. Super successful. The other quick thing that I would mention, and if you don't look for this, you definitely want to. It's that coachability. Having a big ego and thinking that you know it all is just like the kiss of death, because the SDR job is continual experimentation and continual failure, over the course of days and weeks and months and years. And if you're walking in thinking, I've tried everything, I know everything already, and I'm not coachable, oh man, you're going to struggle. So I would say, taking that full ownership and having a great coachable attitude, you're halfway there towards success.
Awesome. Let's talk, by the way, we have a question that's not necessarily sales development, but maybe we can try to get to it right before, get an opinion from everyone right before we wrap up here. So we got a couple minutes left. Channels, right? Like, has email died? Like, I remember the day when I got a job. This was now 12 years ago as a SDR, essentially. I used to send just email, one-line emails. Do you remember? I used to talk about this all the time. Who would I speak to about, making you more money on social media or something like that, right? And those things used to work. And, over the last couple of years, particularly my last startup, I remember just going, holy smokes, this thing has changed so much. Does email even work anymore? Gabe, what would you say are the channels, and how has messaging, really have to change?
Yeah, for sure. I'll be brief here too. So a couple things. Number one, Salesforce used to just be for tech companies. Then Salesforce infiltrated all industries, and then you could say the same thing about Outreach and SalesLoft. So basically, like, you used to just have tech people sending mass emails. Now you literally have like every industry, and that's proven through the market domination of the incumbents or the up and comers, right? Mm-hmm. So like literally, there's just more going on, right? What we've noticed though is we've just had to create some new best practices for emails to get back to our reply rates. Like, our reply rates were tanking. Everything was tanking. We were like, we wonder if people just aren't checking their email anymore because they're so overwhelmed. That was part of it, because like we had all these things going on in society. Then we realized, well, if their boss emails them like, hey, what's up with the Q4 numbers? We're down right now. They're going to respond to that. Mm-hmm. And when we took that sense of accountability, we actually changed some of our tactics to be like, our subject lines became longer, but we started using the title of the person we're going after in the subject line. But we broke our old rule of how long a subject line can be. And like that little crack actually got our reply rates right back to where they used to be. So it's just about understanding the numbers have changed, but you can still find success if you adopt your new strategy to what the current industry numbers are. So that's kind of my short answer.
Yeah. Cool.
David, what are you seeing around this?
I mean,
what channels too?
Yeah, 100%. So I would take a step back in thinking about channels. I think, folks get really wrapped up in like, what's the latest and greatest thing that's going to work. And I would tell you that the key to successful sales development right now is actually project management. And when I say project management, it's continual experimentation, tracking, and reporting on what's working and what's not. It's doing A/B testing. So you got to try everything that's specific to your vertical or your industry, and then be able to track and report on what's working and what's not in order to start to pick up signals. So I would look at it from that angle if you're trying to figure out what is it going to be, email, LinkedIn, etc.
Jay, I know you're doing a lot of work on this for a lot of different companies. What would you say on this topic?
You have to look at your messaging strategy from like a holistic view, not just like, is it calls or emails or LinkedIn? It has to be a combination of all of them, right? The glory days of sending one email are gone. But Gabe also drives a very valid point as well, right? Like, what the message has to really, really, really resonate. And I think people have just gotten really lazy over time. They're just going to send something that, they just send something, right? And they probably will send an email that if they got it, they will never reply back to, which is crazy. And they'll send thousands and thousands of those emails without stopping and asking, would I even reply to this, right? So, David said too, like, kind of taking a step back to like, what's your overall strategy And it's going to take a couple things, right? Sometimes emails won't get replied to, but they're a good foundation for when you call someone, right? Or same with LinkedIn. So you got to think of your outreach strategy as a whole, kind of like a whole kind of program based around different channels or strategies, not just like emails don't work anymore or emails dead, cold calling's dead. I hate that conversation. It's a overall strategy of reaching out to someone across different channels and strategies.
It's kind of like Mike here on the comment wall talks about sales in an agile company is not like a machine, but an organism. So even our tools have to kind of work together. So you saying like sending an email, even if they don't respond, you can leverage that in a LinkedIn message and say, hey, just wanted to follow up on my email that I sent you.
Yeah, sort of, but you want to even go deeper, right? So you want to look at, I think reply and open rates are a good metric just to understand like, okay, you're getting someone's attention, but that's not what you should be focusing on 100%. Because look, you can send 100 emails and you get 100% reply rate and everyone's like unsubscribe. That's not really effective, right? So you want to make sure that if I sent out 100 emails and 5 people got back to me, but they booked a meeting with me, that's way more valuable to me, even if I had a 5% reply rate. I don't care. I got 5 meetings. That's what I'm shooting for. What's the end goal, right? Which is the book meetings and then revenue attribution. Is your messaging actually attributing to revenue in the long haul? That's what's more important to me. I can care less about reply rates or open rates for the most part, right? Obviously, if I have a 0% reply and open rates, then we want to look at that. But for the most part, like you want to go beyond those. Those are good benchmarks to make sure people are engaging with you. But after that, what are people saying? That's kind of what I would advise and kind of share with people. That's what you should be looking at.
Got it. Well, we have a couple minutes left here, about 3 minutes left. There's a question from Steve Chadwick. This is more about just business in general. And Steve asks, what are the foundational BD tactics for a small startup marketing consulting firm that has 2 to 3 clients? You know, I know that's there's a lot there, but maybe we can just each go around the horn and just kind of think of one thing to tell Steve. And if anyone else here in the last 2 minutes has any questions, please go ahead and submit your questions. Steve, what I would say is the foundation for any business is being able to identify your ideal customer profile, right? And you know, obviously you want to get more than 2 or 3 clients, but you want to look at those 2 or 3 clients and ask yourself which one is the best client from a revenue perspective, from a working with perspective, from what aligns with what you want to do as a business as well. They may be in different verticals, or maybe one vertical or industry that you want to work in longer term and see has a bigger opportunity. So that's what I would say. David, what do you think?
Yeah, I would go with that. Once you have a good idea about who that person might be, find 5 or 6 of them, and I would say take them out to lunch, pre-COVID, but maybe just see if they'll spend some time with you for 15 minutes and ask them a bunch of open-ended questions. I mean, you don't even have to talk about what you're selling, but find out about them. How did they get the job? What do they deal with every day? What's a pain in the neck? What's a headache for them? What are they trying to achieve? A bunch of open-ended questions all about them. And, probably by the end, they'll ask what you're doing, but make it all about them so that you can just start to learn what it's like in their world. You'll make a friend and you'll get some great information, and who knows, you might even get a referral. Got
it. Real quick, just in a couple seconds, Gabe, because we got one more question that got submitted we want to get to, and maybe we'll just see who wants to grab that one. But any advice you would give Steve?
One thing we found really effective, we sent like $20 Starbucks gift cards. It's like to people who we try to book. We said, hey, we know the new week is going to be daunting. It's a short week. Hopefully we can make it easier for you. Here's coffee on us for the rest of the week. That got us a lot of meetings. We also just went into Excel and we didn't have perfect data in Salesforce, but we took any data we could find and we just tried to find trends. And then once we found trends, that tactic really bailed us out. So trends and holiday gift cards seem to bring quick results.
Awesome. Jay, I'm going to pass you the question from Dakota Barron. In the early stages of revenue organizations, when budget might not be available and traditional tactics such as cold calling and cold emails are the foundation of sales, where do you start in prospecting? Should you call? Should you email anyone who vaguely fits? Or should you endeavor to qualify them in the early days?
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard to understand your buyer 100%. You're probably gonna, to David's point and everyone else's point, create the profile you think is your best fit, and look, you just gotta do old school tactics in terms of like go on. I mean, again, I don't know what you sell, but if I was thinking this way, I would be going on, G2 Crowd or whatever available databases, LinkedIn, just like scouring myself and pulling all that data off in terms of companies I was interested in reaching out to. And if you're a small organization, you have limited time capacity, consider email just to see what kind of feedback you get. But David had a really good point in terms of like find someone you think is your customer and actually call them and kind of ask some questions like, would this project resonate with you? Then you start to like collect data points on what might be important to them based on what you're selling, and then you can position your messaging from that feedback you're getting from potential customers. So that's what I would do.
So more Dakota, it sounds like more like you're doing some of these early, what we call customer development, which is not really trying to sell someone. It's more calling them up. We have this offering that can add this benefit. You got 5-10 minutes because we're doing research on our offering, that kind of thing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, folks, Sahil, yes, Jason, that's what I was saying earlier.
What does Sahil say?
He says Jason looks like Jack Dorsey. But that's kind of a good compliment.
I forgot my nose ring though, Sahil. Forgot the nose ring.
Well, David, Gabe, Jason, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and wrap up for this session. Thank you so much for everyone joining us. Here's the thing, everyone. So for the audience out there, what you want to do is, Casey, you're going to be in session 2. So make sure you go up to the schedule up there at the top. Click on, I'm also going to type in here where everyone should be going to. Sahil, you're also going to be in session 2. And for the audience, click on the schedule at the top. Click on session number 2, and we'll start to get that kicked off here shortly. But thanks again to all of you folks. What we can do also, if you want, Jason, David, and Gabe, is post your LinkedIn URL on this page in case folks want to get in contact with you, or of your emails or what other channels you'd like folks to be able to utilize to get in touch with you. And for everyone else, we'll see you in the next session in a couple minutes. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.